Bismillah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashraf al-anbiya'i wal-mursaleen. Nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een ma ba'du. Tonight, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to start the explanation of Umdah al-Ahkam. Umdah al-Ahkam. Taysir al-Allam, Sharh Umdah al-Ahkam. And firstly, the book Umdah al-Ahkam is a book of ahadith. Different ahadith that have been gathered. And these ahadith are specifically regarding fiqh, ahadith ahkam, the halal and the haram. So, I don't know if the speaker's on back there. If the speaker's not on back there, sisters, you gotta push the button on the back. This book, Umdat al-Ahkam, it is not a book of aqidah, or adab, or tafsir, by Shaykh Abdul Ghani, Abdul Wahid al-Maqdisi, rahimahullah. It's not a book of tafsir or adab or aqidah. It's a book dealing with the halal and the haram, a hadith regarding what's permissible and what's impermissible in each chapter. Which means that fiqh, we're talking about the science of fiqh, wherein there are going to be differences of opinion, different ways that scholars look at this, the same hadith. You're going to see in this book, how do the scholars look at one hadith and come up with two different rulings. They're both looking at the same hadith. The hadith is authentic, right? They look at the hadith and one scholar says this action is sunnah. One scholar says this action is wajib. Why does that happen? And this will be a good example of the text that they use, because this book is a little different than the books of fiqh, where a lot of times the books of fiqh have already been summarized. The information has been summarized, and they really, depending on the level of the book, they just give you the ruling on something, right? So they might say siwak is sunnah, to do it like this, and they just tell you the steps without mentioning the dalil, without mentioning the text from the Quran or the Sunnah, which doesn't mean that they don't have dalil, but books are written for a purpose. Books are written for a purpose. The ulama write books depending on the need, and they write them with a purpose. So those books are written with a certain purpose, with a goal. And this book, a book like this, is written with a goal, or was written with a goal. So number one, this is an ahadith ahkam. And this book is from the books that the scholars, the ulama, advise after a person has memorized and understood the 40 hadith of Imam al-Nawawi, rahimahullah, after the Arba'in al-Nawawi, that the ulama advise. This is one of the books that the ulama advise, the scholars advise for a student to start with after that, Umdat al-Ahkam, which there are other books like it that may be a little more famous. For example, Bulugh al-Maram. Bulugh al-Maram is the same type of book. Bulugh al-Maram is the same type of book. I forget the translation. It's translated. The objective, I forget the translation. But it's translated. And the difference between the two is Bulugh al-Maram is a lot longer. As Bulugh al-Maram has over 1,000 hadith, over 1,000, close to 1,500 hadith. Whereas Umdat al-Ahkam is a lot shorter, over 400 hadith. Over 400 hadith. Bulugh al-Maram has over 1,000, almost 1,400 or 1,500. Secondly, Umdat al-Ahkam, this book of a hadith, is the hadith are taken from Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, all of them. Whereas in Bulugh al-Maram, they're from Bukhari, Muslim, and from other books of hadith, which means sometimes the hadith may have some kalam on the authenticity of it. Point being, this book here, the benefit of it is that it's shorter. It's shorter, number one. Number two, the ahadith are from Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, which gives a person ease in regarding the authenticity of the hadith, if the hadith is authentic or not. طيب. So, Umdah Al-Ahkam, as he said, is a book of fiqh. Do we all know what fiqh is? Do we know what fiqh is? And what fiqh isn't? Huh? You know what fiqh is and what fiqh isn't? The science of fiqh. Anyone? In simple terms. We don't need a heavy definition. The science of the halal and haram. This halal and haram. This is not a book on how to believe in Allah. Aqeedah. Even though a hadith may have a benefit, or it may discuss some aqeedah in it. If that's the case, the focus is not on that part of the hadith. Okay? You with me? The focus is not on that part of the hadith, not in this book. The focus, the same hadith may come in another book where they focus on that issue in aqeedah, but that book may be a book of aqeedah. Goes in a book, same hadith in another book, they're focusing on another part of the hadith. So this book is focusing on the halal and the haram. Tayyib, which is fiqh. Fiqh in basic terms, the halal and the haram. Knowledge of the halal and the haram with regards to what can we do and what can't we do. What's permissible to do, what's impermissible to do. What's from the sunnah to do, what's disliked to do. Okay? Tayyib. So, he starts off, rahimahullah, with Kitab al-Taharah. Kitab al-Taharah. And this sharh is by Shaykh Abdullah Bassam, rahimahullah. And it's a short explanation. It's straight to the point where he'll give some of the benefits that we can take from the hadith. And it'll be good exercise to show how the scholars extract benefit and how they extract rulings from the text, from the nas. So he starts off Kitab al-Taharah. Wa-Taharah lugatan al-Nadafa. Tahara in the Arabic language means to purify or cleanse something, to cleanse something. Al-Tahara, Kitab al-Tahara in the Arabic language, to cleanse something. But in the Islamic legislative meaning, the legislative meaning, Shar'an Raf' al-Hadith wa Zawal al-Khabath. Raf' al-Hadith, to remove hadith. 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 Anybody heard this before? Hadith or Raf' al-Hadith? You know hadith? What is hadith? Impurity. To remove impurities. Like, what's the major one? Tayyib. Raf'a al-Hadith. So if we say that, for example, the removal of impurities. Tayyib. He said Raf'a al-Hadith wa Zawal al-Khabath. Hadith and Khabath. You gotta remove two things. Tahara is to remove two things. Number one, Raf' al-Hadith. Number two, Zawal al-Khabath. One of them is the impurity, right? The other one, the hadith that you're talking about, yeah, it's two of them. One is major and one is a minor. But what is hadith and khabath? Khabath is the tangible thing. For example, if we want to pray, right? And a person has, for example, maybe they work around animals. One of the animals urinate, and the urination gets on their pants leg or something like that. Or the sister's changing the baby, right? Or anything happens, some type of urinate, somebody urinates, anything. You're working for a trash truck, as a brother said one day. And when he was working with the trash truck and it smelled like urine got on his clothes, so he couldn't pray. That in order to pray, that the khabath has to be removed. That tangible impurity, that tangible impurity that can be touched has to be removed. Whether it's urine, or any other thing, blood, right? That those things have to be removed first from a person's clothes, If it's on your clothes, you have to wash it out. If it's on the place we're going to pray in, if you get ready to pray, you're outside on the ground somewhere, and there's urination on it, you got to clean. It has to be cleansed. You can't just pray on top of that like that. That has to be cleansed first. That is the khabath, zawal al-khabath. The hadith, which is two types. For example, if we say in the hadith al-akbar, the major type of impurity, right? If I need to make a ghusl, can you tell by looking at me? You with me? You with me? If I have to make wudu, can you tell just by looking at me? If a brother walks in the door right now, do we know? We don't know if he's in wudu or not, unless you ask him, right? This is hadith. It's a minor form, it's a major form and a minor form. The khabath, for example, you can see it. You might be able to see yellow urine on a person's throat. You say, yo, you got something on the back of your throat. Right? He'll tell you, I just came from walking the dog. I got a dog, you know, it guards the area, whatever. I just came from walking the dog. You can see it. The hadith you can't see. So they describe it as wasful qa'im. That is a description that's given to a person. The hadith is a description that's given to a person that prevents them from doing certain types of actions, certain types of worship, like salah. Right? You got to remove the hadith, meaning either A, you have to make wudu, if you got a minor form of hadith, minor form of impurity, we'll say, or B, they have to make a ghusl. He or she has to make a ghusl. Okay, either A or B. Either one, at least you got to make wudu. Meaning, what breaks a person's wudu? Huh? Breaking wind. Passing gas breaks wudu. What else? Sleeping, sleeping, going to the bathroom. So if a person does one of those things, then at least they got to make wudu. Type of a person, a woman or a man, they're intimate with their spouse, right? Then it's going to necessitate a ghusl. Either way, it's a form of hadith that has to be removed before they can pray. So this is Taharah. Either A, removing that impurity that can't be seen with either wudu or ghusl, or B, removing something that's actually visible. You can actually see it. Whether it's urine, we'll just use that for example, that's on the clothing, or urine that's on the place that you get ready to pray or something like that. Kitab al-Taharah. So this chapter is dealing with those issues. So he says, Al-Hadith al-Awwal, the first hadith in this chapter. عن أمير المؤمنين أبي حفص عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول إنما الأعمال بالنيات وإنما لكل امرئ ما نوى فمن كانت هجرته إلى الله ورسوله فهجرته إلى الله ورسوله ومن كانت هجرته لدنيا يصيبها أو امرأة ينكحها فهجرته إلى ما هاجر إليه البخاري ومسلم. The hadith, the famous hadith that indeed all actions are by the intention. All actions are by intentions. And first, the hadith is narrated by Abu Hafs, Umar ibn al-Khattab, which was who? Who was Umar? Islamically, in Islamic history books, Umar is who? It's not a trick question. One of the companions. That's just one of the companions. Umar ibn al-Khattab. Definitely one of the companions. Only. Sheikh. Lab. Is the sisters over there? Umar. Who's Umar ibn al-Khattab? There you are. Sorry. No mic? I can hear you. Inshallah. Mumtaz, the second Khalifa. Mumtaz. The second Khalifa after who? Jayyid. After Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu. Tayyib. The second Khalifa. Which means Do we understand what that means? Which means after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, he was in charge of the Muslims, the leader of all of the Muslims. Not just a pocket of them, the leader, Amir al-Mu'mineen, the leader of the Muslims. Okay? After the death of the Messenger ﷺ. After Abu Bakr died, radiallahu anhu, Omar was in charge of the Muslims. He was the leader of the Muslims, Amir al-Mu'mineen. It says, Aslama bi Mecca qadiman. He accepted Islam in Mecca. Umar accepted Islam in Mecca, took Shahada in Mecca, wa shahida al-mashahid kullaha. And he was at all of the battles. All of the battles. He was there for all of the battles. Wa waliya khilafa ba'da Abi Bakr. And he was the Khalifa, the successor, the Khalifa after Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhuma. وقتل سنة 23 من الهجرة في ذي الحجة. He was killed, Omar radiallahu anhu was assassinated and killed the 23rd year after the Hijrah. The 23rd year after the Hijrah. What year is this after the Hijrah? Anybody know? Anybody know? On the Islamic calendar, well, on the Islamic calendar, what year are we in right now? Huh? Mumtaz, 1439. 1,439 years after the Hijrah. After the time when the Prophet ﷺ made Hijrah from Mecca to Medina. 1439 now. Omar radiallahu anhu was killed in the year 23. Tayyib. You can do the math. Subtract 23 from 1439 and see how many years ago that was when Omar was killed, radiallahu anhu. Tayyib, this first hadith is narrated by Umar ibn al-Khattab. That he said that the messenger, I heard the messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, that all actions, that actions are by intention. That actions are by intention. And every person will get exactly what they intended. Like this famous hadith, that every person will get exactly what they intended. And then he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he made an example of the person who made hijrah. They moved from one country to another country, and why they moved and the reward that they would get for it. Tayyib. He goes here and talks and brings some basic benefits before the other benefits that are brought in the book. So first he mentions briefly some of the things that we hear in the hadith, and then he goes into the general meaning of the hadith overall, and then lastly some of the benefits that we can take from the hadith. Some of the general benefits we can take from the hadith. Tayyib. An-niyya, we always say the intention, right? You have to make an intention before you do any type of act or worship. Al-qasd, an-niyya lughatan al-qasd, and in the Arabic language it means to intend something. The qasd, to have the intention to do something. Shar'an, Islamically, legislatively, al-azmu ala al-ibadah, taqarruban ila Allah ta'ala. That a person has that desire and they have that drive, determination to do some type of worship that's going to get them closer to Allah. And he's going to mention some brief benefits. So a niyyah. And the niyyah has many rulings attached to it. From the benefits of the niyyah, the intention, is that some of the ulama differ on, is the niyyah a shart or a rukn? Is the niyyah for an action? So if a person wants to pray, for example, is the niyyah a condition for the salat? Or is the niyyah a rukn, a pillar of the salat? You with me? Is the niyyah a condition or a pillar? The ulama differ. Do we know the difference between a condition and a pillar? It's important to know the difference between a condition and a pillar, not just for this chapter, but for example, salat, kitab al-salat. Anybody know the difference between a condition and a pillar? For example, we have shurut al-salat. right? The conditions for the salat. And then we have arkan as-salat, the pillars of the salat, right? Anybody know the difference? Just from, that was a hint. One of them invalidates the prayer if you leave it off. Both of them invalidate the prayer if you leave it off. Sah? Both of them. Meaning, if a person is praying and in the middle of salat they break the wudu, then that what? Invalidates the prayer. Right? If a person is praying and they skip al-Fatiha, then what? It invalidates the prayer. The wudu is a shart, a condition, and al-Fatiha is a rukn, is a pillar. They both invalidate the salat. Another difference. What's the difference between a condition and a pillar? It's not a trick question. This is not. If I give you a hint, I think it'd be easier. The condition is when. When do the conditions come? Wudu, facing the qibla. Before. The shurut come before the action. The conditions are before you do the action. So before we can even stand to pray, you have to have what? Wudu. You have to remove any filth from you. You have to what? Face the qibla. You didn't even start praying yet, right? We didn't even start praying yet. Face the qibla. All of those conditions, Islam, a Muslim, you have your sanity, right? All of those things before we even make the takbir. Allahu Akbar. Tayyib. The pillars are where? Inside of the action itself. So once we start praying, now the pillars take place. Right? Takbiratul ihram, reciting al-Fatiha, ruku', coming from ruku'. All those things are part of the action. Alright? Is the intention, is the niyyah, and this is the question now, is the niyyah from the conditions before you start praying or from the pillars? The scholars differ. Scholars differ. Either way, if a person leaves it off, it's going to invalidate the action. Mahalluha al-qalb, that the niyyah is established, the intention is established in the heart. So there's no need for a person to stand up and say with their lips, I intend to pray Salatul Maghrib 3 rak'ah out loud here at the Imam Muslim Family Center, Math. As the niyyah, the intention is already in the heart. A person comes all the way from their house, the IMFC, driving in their car, they make wudu, the intention is to pray Maghrib. That's enough. That's enough that they come with that intention, as the ulama mentioned. How to yanwi, and yanwiya fi'lul alladhi yurid. That a person just makes the intention with the heart. What do they want to do, and that's enough. That it's not that we have to go overboard, not say overboard, but there's no difficulty in making the intention. The intention is easy. When a person has a istihbar, that they bring it here, that they're conscious, they're aware of what they want to do, and they make the intention to do it, and that's enough. Shurutuha al-Islam, that a person is a Muslim. Number one, that they're Muslim, that they're sanity, right? That these things are from, all these things are connected to the niyyah. As the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. If a person doesn't even have their sanity, they don't know what the niyyah is anyway, right? لَا يَعْقِلُ النِّيَّةِ. They're not able to even make the intention, the person who doesn't have their sanity. طيب. So he said in the hadith, he gave the example which shows that teaching, and giving examples is a form of teaching. That the Prophet ﷺ, he gave an example of the man who makes hijrah, who moves from one country to another country in order to not save his religion or preserve his or her religion. That wasn't his intention. In order to marry a woman, right? So, in some of the shuruh, which is not here in another sharh, the sharh is by Ibn Daqiq al-Eid, rahimahullah, and it mentions why, that example, why was that example used in the hadith of the woman? So the Prophet ﷺ, he could have used any example, right? But he used the example of, for the intention, for the one who travels in order to marry a woman, then that's what he traveled for. And he says, لأنهم نقلوا أن الرجل هاجر من مكة إلى المدينة ولا لا يريد بذلك الفضيلة الهجرة وإنما هاجر ليتزوج المرأة تسمى قيس. That they mentioned that he used this example in this hadith of the person making hijrah, moving from the land from one land to another. That there was a man that he moved from Mecca to Medina. He up and moved from Mecca to Medina, which is approximately 4 hours driving in a car. 4 hours, maybe 4.5 hours driving, around 4 hours driving in a car. He moved from Mecca to Medina, and they said that he wasn't making hijrah in order to preserve his religion. That his intention was to marry a woman, and her name was Qais. Qais. So they called the man, he became known as Muhajir Qais. He became known as the one who made hijrah for the sister woman Qais. Right? Everybody with me? The reason why it could have been any example used about the intention and an action. But the Prophet ﷺ, he used the example of a man who makes hijrah to another land for something from the dunya. As the women, this is from the dunya. This is not worship. He didn't do it for worship purposes. He did it to something from the dunya, to get married. So they mention that is the story behind the Messenger ﷺ mentioning exactly that type of example. طيب. المعنى الإجمالي, the general meaning of the hadith. As he says, النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام يخبر أن مدار الأعمال على النيات. He's telling us that actions are connected to and surrounded to what? The intention of a person. The actions are connected to the intention, the niyyah of an individual. فإن كانت النية صالحة والعمل خالصا لوجه الله تعالى فالعمل مقبول. So if the action is for Allah, it's a righteous action, is for Allah, and the person did it seeking Allah's reward, then the action is accepted. Based on what? Not the surah, not the picture, not what it looks like. Based on how we know if the action is accepted, based on the intention. Number one, it could be a perfect action, but a person could be doing it for other than Allah. Right? And we say that at the sisters class, for example. We say that at the sisters class, that method. A sister's at home praying, or a brother's in the house praying, right? He's praying. Salah. He's praying how he's praying, or she's praying how she's praying. While she's praying, her husband walks in the room while she's praying. You with me? He just coming to grab a pair of socks or something, whatever. He's picking up a pen. He comes in the room to grab something. He comes in the room, and this could go for both ways, not just the sister or the brother, either way. He comes in the room, and when he comes in the room, she beautifies her qira'ah of the Quran. She makes her recitation even better. She puts on the best recitation that she has now. Right? He comes in the room, she stays in ruku longer. She straightens her back super straight, which is all, this is good. But you do that if he's in the room or if he's not in the room. Don't show it's not for him, right? And for the brother, it's not for her. The perfection of the salat is not for our wives. And for the wives, the perfection of our salat is not for the husbands. It's for our own benefit. That when somebody comes in the room and now we change what we're doing to try to make it look perfect, not because we're supposed to make it look perfect, because somebody else came in the room and they may be watching. Right? This is guarding. We have to guard our ikhlas. We have to guard our sincerity. That we pray how we pray. Whether a person's in the room or nobody's in the room, Allah is watching us all the time. Allah is always watching. That person comes and goes. The person comes in the room and they leave. So if the action is sincerely for Allah's reward, then that action is accepted. He says, وَإِنْ كَانَتْ غَيْرَ ذَلِكَ, if it's not like that, فَالْعَمَلْ مَرْدُودٌ. فَالْعَمَلْ مَرْدُودٌ. If the action is not sincere, then that action is not accepted. And the Prophet ﷺ, he told it in another hadith that ar-riya, showing off, ar-riya we say showing off, minor shirk, is that a man stands and he prays, and he beautifies the prayer based on other people looking at him. That this is a form of riya, showing off. And if that type of thing enters into a person's action, that action is invalid. How much? The whole salat is invalid, or just that rak'ah, or just that action? The ulama differ, and he's going to mention that a little later. طيب. He says after that, ثم ضرب عليه الصلاة والسلام مثلا يوضح هذه القاعدة الجليلة بالهجرة. So he mentioned, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentioned an example in order to bring it closer, in order that people could understand exactly what are we talking about. Actions are by intentions. What does that mean? Right? So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he gave an example. من كانت هجرته إلى الله ورسوله فهجرته إلى الله ورسوله. Whoever made hijrah seeking Allah's reward, then he will be rewarded based on his intention. And whoever made hijrah for something from the dunya, a woman or something from the dunya, then he gets exactly what he intended. Meaning that example was used, and there could have been other examples that's used, but they mentioned it in the other explanations. That's why he used that example based on the story that was happened during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, showing that using examples is a form of learning in order to make sure that the person that you're talking to understands exactly what you're talking about. As knowing the principle, aqaidah, is one thing, but how to apply it is something else, right? Knowing a hadith is one thing, but how do we use the hadith is a whole nother subject, a whole nother topic, which a lot of times we don't know how to use the hadith. We know the hadith, we know them verbatim, we know exactly word for word, but we don't know how to use them, right? This is a whole nother chapter. طيب. He says, an-niyya wa-niyya here is discussing the maratib an-niyya, the different things that the intention is used for. طيب. تميز العبادة عن العادة. That an intention is what distinguishes something that is worship from something that is just a custom, something that we do. Clear? The intention is what distinguishes something from being ibadah, worship, from something that is just customary that we do. You with me? Huh? Now let me ask you right now. Is that clear or no? Honestly. Could you give an example? Huh? If it ain't clear, we need an example. You understand what I'm saying? Then when the Prophet say something, he gave an example. To give an example, methalan, it's hot right now. So say, for example, I forget your name. What's your name? Abdul Haq. Abdul Haq comes in. He goes, it's hot, it's the summer. Abdul Haq goes in the back, turns on the water, right? Turns on the water. He hits all of the limbs, everything that you would clean in wudu. Huh? He wipes everything, turns the water on, puts it on his face, arms, everything, head, feet, everything, right? He did that for what reason? Huh? It was hot. Does that count for wudu? No, it doesn't count for wudu. What's going to make it count for wudu? If he went back there with the intention of making wudu, right? He went back there with the intention of making wudu, then he makes wudu. But if he goes back there with the intention of it's hot outside, tabarrud they call it, they just want to cool off. The intention is to cool off, right? So the intention is what's going to distinguish the worship, which is the wudu, from the custom, which is what we do to cool off. We might splash water on our face and just wet some areas that we feel as though are the hot spots. And maybe they just happen to be the spots of wudu, right? You with me? Or, let's say, a person does the same thing for a ghusl. It's hot outside, right? So they go in the house. It's supposed to be like 100 degrees or something the next couple of days. It's hot. A person goes back home in the middle of the day, 3:30, 4 o'clock. They say, I got to jump in the shower. It's hot outside. I need to jump in the shower. Not for ghusl, to do what? To cool off. It's hot. So their intention was what? To cool off. Therefore, that's what they get. They get the exactly that. You cooled off. Alhamdulillah. Which you can do. You can cool off. There's nothing saying you can't go in the house, take a shower to cool off. But that doesn't count for a ghusl. Him going in the back to cool off doesn't count for wudu. It doesn't count for that. Clear? That's what one thing that the niyyah does. One thing that the intention does is it separates, it distinguishes between worship and customs. And that could go for many examples. Anybody got another example? Any other examples that could possibly be used? Just based on that? That's how you really know if you know. Probably.
It could be like keeping ties of kinship. You know, you might visit your parents customarily, but at times you might say, you know, I'm going to do this today for the sake of the law. You know, I'm going to try to, you know. And sometimes, like, I used to tell my wife, like, you know, you want to have a good impression on their heart so that you always have that door open to call them.
For da'wah.
So, you know, if they non-believers, so you can set your intention on also, like, being around them so that y'all can have that closer bond and you feel that warmth, you know, for da'wah versus just seeing them, you know what I mean?
As opposed to, oh, that's my mom, let me pull over real quick.
Yeah.
Right? You're not just going to ride by, you're going to pull over and jump out. Of course you're going to pull over and jump out, as opposed to making an intention to actually go there for a specific reason. So you know what, Bill Walidain is from Islam, it's supposed to be good to the parents, or they sick, visiting the sick, right? Jade. What else? Maybe? Because I think one of them, a couple of things we do a lot. Mathalan, for example, if it's a new shahada, right? What do they need to know? Immediately they got to know what? The new shahada. How
to pray.
How to pray. So what we do? We show them how to pray. Right? We do a whole prayer. Are we praying or are we just showing them how to pray? Is the intention to really pray? Right? Or is the intention, I just want to show the new shahada, the new Muslim, the positions, do like this and then do like that? Because if the intention is to pray, we are talking about the salat. That's another issue, but the intention is what? To show them how to pray. I'm not really trying to pray Maghrib. I'm not really trying to pray Dhuhr or Asr. I just want to I'm just showing them how to pray. So you want to do like this? All right, like not in the salat. Remember, we're not praying, not when we're actually praying. We're just showing, well, this is the salat. You're going to do like this first, and then we're going to go down, then we're going to come up, then we're going to go down, right? You might do all of the actions of the salat, right? And it doesn't count as the actual prayer based on the niyyah. And as the ulama say, that it could be that two people, we all come, all of us, the brothers, the sisters, we all come in here and we pray the same salat. And one person's salat could be totally invalid. And they standing right next to the next person whose salat is complete. Based on the intention. May Allah Jalla wa ala protect us. Ameen. Tayyib. He says, secondly, the niyyah, the intention, fi sharb ahaduhuma. There are two more things for the intention. That number one thing the intention has to do with is al-ikhlas min al-amal fi al-amal lillah wahda. Ikhlas. We always talk about the intention, the niyyah is for Allah, right? Niyyah, this is ikhlas, which comes in the books of, or the ulama of Tawheed. They usually discuss ikhlas and making your worships purely and sincerely for Allah Jalla wa ala, right? A lot of discussion on ikhlas comes in the books of Tawheed, in the books of Adab. It says, وَالثَّانِي تمييز العبادات بعضها عن بعض وهذا يتحدث عنه الفقهاء. That the ulama of fiqh, they discuss the niyyah, distinguishing between two acts of worship that the niyyah actually separates and distinguishes between two acts of worship. You with me? Huh? Sisters, you with me? Two acts of worship. They look alike. The worship looks the same, but they're totally different. They're on different levels. And somebody give me an example. Mumtaz. And what else? Compared to what? Huh? Actually praying Salat al-Fajr. That what? The sunnah rak'ahs for Fajr. The sunnah before Fajr is how many rak'ahs? 2. Tayyib. Salat al-Fajr itself is how many rak'ahs? 2. Tayyib. A brother comes through the front door for Salat al-Fajr, comes over here and prays 2 rak'ah. How do we know what he's praying? Just by looking. It could be Tahiyatul Masjid. He could be coming at Tahiyatul. So now you got 3 of them. What separates one from the other? The intention. We wouldn't know. If he came, we wouldn't know just by looking. Is he praying Tahiyatul Masjid or is he praying the 2 rak'ahs before Fajr that the Prophet ﷺ said? The rak'ah Fajr, khayr min ad-dunya wa ma fiha. That the 2 rak'ahs before Fajr are better than the dunya, everything in this world and everything in it. A person comes and we don't know if he comes in to pray or she comes in to pray the 2 rak'ahs before Fajr. We don't know if she's praying Tahiyatul Masjid. We don't know if she's praying Fajr. He could come in, he might come in and think we already prayed, like it happens sometimes. Brother comes in here, brothers are sitting around, so he assumes, he thinks that we already prayed. So they don't ask, did y'all pray already? He'll just go over there and pray. Fajr. His 2 rak'ahs of Fajr is fardh, his wajib. He'll pray by himself without the jama'ah. Then we call Al-Ahkam and say, y'all ain't pray yet? Yeah. We ain't pray yet. Right? The only thing that's going to distinguish between the 2 rak'ahs before Fajr, the sunnah, and the obligatory salat, the Fajr, is the niyyah. So the intention distinguishes between 2 acts of worship itself. It also distinguishes between, is it worship or is it just something that we do out of habit, a customary practice? All of those things come under the chapter of the niyyah. Tayyib. He started the book with this hadith, and many of the books of hadith start with the same hadith, that إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Imam an-Nawawi's book starts with it, 40 hadith. Imam al-Bukhari's book start with it, the same hadith. That they say, the scholars say, as they say, that this hadith لِدُخُولِهِ فِي كُلِّ مَسْأَلَةٍ مِنْ مَسَائِلِ الْعِلْمِ وَكُلُّ بَابٍ مِنْ أَبْوَابِهِ. That this hadith regarding the niyyah, the intention, it enters into every issue. Any issue you can think of, the niyyah is some type of way attached to it. Throughout all of our actions, the niyyah is some way, shape, or form attached to it. And that's why sometimes questions come about, if I did this, if I did that. It depends. What were you trying to do when you did it? Did you do it with the intent of doing this, or did you do it with the intent of doing that? And this could be in another chapter. It don't have to be in the salat. It could be in a chapter of anything, right? Especially in the chapter of nikah, marriage and divorce. Intention is big. Intention is big. Tayyib. Now he brings some of the benefits that are taken from the hadith. In this section shows how the ulama look at the hadith and pull out benefits based on the text. Based on that hadith, right? And these benefits a lot of times are taken from what's in front of us. Based on this, what do we benefit from this hadith? Right? We're not talking about another hadith. We're talking about this one right here, the benefits that are taken from it. Tayyib. He says, number 1, إِنَّمَا دَارَ الْأَعْمَالِ عَنَ النِّيَّاتِ صِحَّةً وَفَسَادًا وَكَمَالًا وَنَقْصًا وَطَاعَةً وَمَعْصِيَةً. That actions are connected to intentions, whether it's the correctness of that action, if the action is going to be correct or invalid, valid or invalid, right? It's going to be based on intention, right? The salat is valid or invalid it could be based on a person's intention. right? If a person is praying to show off so that people see him praying, right? Riyah, then it's going to invalidate the action. Right? If a person is praying and their heart is sincerely praying to Allah, it's their obligation and they're seeking a reward from Allah, then the salat is valid. Like kamalan wa naqsan, that the action could be complete or incomplete based on the intention. Based on the intention. You with me? And that's why they say that this hadith enters into all chapters. It's not just in the salat. And this is why they open up the books. Many books of hadith open up with the same hadith because of the importance of it. Tayyib. He says, in the niyyah, he says, in the niyyah shart asasi fil amal, lakin bila ghulu fi istihdariha. That the intention, of course, is a condition for the actions of a condition, a staple condition that has to be there. That the person's intention, that they're doing the action sincerely seeking Allah's reward. And what's the second condition for actions to be accepted? That is done according to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. That is done according to the way the Messenger ﷺ taught us to do that specific action. He says, but without any ghulu, that we don't have to go to extremes in order to show that we've made an intention to do something. That the ulama are serious. They mention they go into serious to have the intention. But how to do the intention is easy. How to do it is easy. That a person has the determination in their heart to do an action, that's enough. As they say, that's enough. Al-azm. He says, فَإِنَّ مُجَرَّدَ قَصْدِ الْعَمَلِ يَكُونُ نِيًّا لَهُ بِدُونِ تَكَلُّفِ اسْتِحْضَارِهَا. That the fact that a person, just because a person has the intention to do it, is enough. Without being a person burdening themselves on, did I make the intention or not? You came out of the house, you made wudu in the house, you knew it was time to pray. You said, you made the intention in your heart, you know, I gotta make wudu, I gotta go pray. They pray at 8:40. Oh yeah. You go to the masjid, they go in there to pray, the intention is there. Right? They come in the masjid, they pray 2 rak'ah, they're waiting for the imam to come. All of that is part of the intention. That is enough. Without a person burdening themselves and feeling like they have to go or do something overboard, as he says, ghulu, without going to extremes. Because some people go to extremes where it becomes burdensome, that it bothers them. Even in the salat, they're still bothered by it. The shaitan is whispering to them, did you make the intention at the beginning of the salat? They salam out and they start over. Right? Or same thing in wudu. They start the wudu, they get all the way to their head, the shaitan whispers, then you start, all right, make my intention. You go back, start over. Go back and start over. Go back and start over. They finish praying by the time he gets done. So as-salamu alaykum. Tayyib. In the niyyah, mahalluha al-qalb. That the intention, the place for the intention is the heart. The heart. As no one would know. No one knows when we stand to pray, except Allah Jalla wa Ala. We don't all walk up to the rink and all mention and say out loud that we're here to pray this salat. We all show up and Allah knows everybody's intention. Every one of us. On the women's side, on the brother's side. Allah knows everybody's intention without us moving our mouth. Right? He said, وَاللَّفْظُ بِهَا بِدْعَةٌ وَاللَّفْظُ بِهَا بِدْعَةٌ. To pronounce it verbally, he says, is a bid'ah, innovation. طيب. Another benefit taken from the hadith, وُجُوبُ الْحَذَرِ مِنَ الرِّيَاءِ وَالسُّمْعَةِ وَالْعَمَلِ لِأَجْلِ الدُّنْيَا. Wujub, the obligation of being aware of riyah, showing off. وَالسُّمْعَةِ, riyah, showing off, wanting to be seen, wanting people to see you. And as-sum'ah, wanting to be heard. وَالْعَمَلِ لِأَجْلِ الدُّنْيَا, and doing things for the benefit of the dunya. Where does that benefit come from in the hadith though? The warning against what? This is the benefit, he says. Warning against riyah, showing off. So that that we do actions so that people can literally be doing it, so that people can see us doing it. And then they say, mashallah, You went into ruku, man, subhanAllah. Your ruku was like perfect. Like your back. I remember that hadith that if the Prophet said pour water, he said if you pour water, it wouldn't roll off. That a person does that, not following the hadith, that they do that so that somebody can say that. Right? Not that we shouldn't do that. We should do it. But we don't do it for somebody to come and tell us that we did a good job doing it. We do it because we've been taught to do it by the Messenger ﷺ. So the question is, where in the hadith do they pull out the fact that it's obligatory for us to be on guard about showing off, about wanting to be seen, or wanting to be heard, or doing actions for a reward in the dunya? What benefit in this hadith gives us that? Or what from the hadith gives us that? Anybody? This is what they call exercise. Exercises. And we used to have to do this on tests. They give you the text and you got to draw out ahkam and benefits from the hadith. That from that hadith in front of you, the one in front of you, not something, because there might be another hadith that's easier, so you might grab from there. We don't want that. We want from this one, who locks you in on this text. That the obligation of being wary of the warning against showing off, whether it's for to be seen or to be heard, or just doing actions in order for some benefit from the dunya. Anybody? That the Messenger ﷺ, he told us. He told us in this hadith, whoever does hijrah, whoever does this for Allah and His Messenger, then he will be rewarded for that. His reward is going to be exactly for that. And whoever does it for li dunya, yusibuha, something from the dunya, or for a woman, they're going to get exactly that. Which lets us know if I do an action, in order for my wife to see me and praise and say, mashallah, and if she wasn't there, I wouldn't do that. And I'm using the wife because these are people, even the people close to us, even the closest people to us, we don't worship for them to praise us. We worship because the worship is to our own benefit. And that's why I'm using the husband and the wife, because these are the closest people to us in our households, or even our children. Now that doesn't mean that sometimes you may do something in order to teach somebody, right? But what? According to the intention. And the a'malu bin-niyat. Everything goes back to the intention. Tayyib. He says, he brings a benefit from Ibn Rajab, rahimahullah, that أَنَّ الْعَمَلِ لِغَيْرِ اللَّهِ عَلَى أَقْسَامٍ, that an action that is done for other than Allah breaks down into two different categories. Two different categories, that a person actually does something for other than Allah. Either one, تَارَةً يَكُونْ رِيَاء مَحْضًا, that one action لَا يَقْصُدْ بِهِ سِوَى مَرَاءَةَ الْمَخْلُوقِينَ, that one time, one category is that a person does, they come and they pray, and they're just doing it just so people can see them. Right? They're not seeking any reward from Allah. Right? This is one action. He says, وَهَذَا لَا يَكَادُ يَصْدَرْ عَنْ مُؤْمِنٍ وَلَا شَكْ أَنَّهُ يَحْبِطُ الْعَمَلِ وَأَنَّ صَاحِبَهُ يَسْتَحِقُّ الْمَقْتِ مِنَ اللَّهِ وَالْعُقُوبَةِ, that the person who does that, they come here to pray, literally, just so people can see them coming in and out and being with the Muslims. They're not praying because they know it's obligatory that they have to pray. They're doing it intentionally so people can really see them. Right? They want some recognition. And Allah knows best that person's intention. That, of course, that action is invalid. That salat is invalid. Even if the picture looks like everybody else in the masjid. Right? His salat is no different than anybody else's salat. Or her salat is no different than anybody else's salat in the masjid. It looks the same. But it's what? Invalid based on the intention. He said this is one category that is totally just to be seen. Some praise from the creation. He said, وَتَارَةً يَكُونَ الْعَمَلِ لِلَّهِ يُشَارِكُهُ الرِّيَاءُ, but sometimes a person, they're praying and they're sincere, or they're fasting and they're sincere. They're doing the act of worship and they're sincere, right? But something comes to them from riyad during the time of the prayer, for example. During the time of the prayer, something happens. Taharah alayhi, they say. Something happens during the time of the prayer. فإن كان شاركه من أصله فإن النصوص الصحيحة تدل على بطلانه. If it is something that they are totally, they started off what? Sincere. Right? And then something from riyad creeps in. What happens? Either A, they continue showing off, let's just say. Or B, they recognize what they're doing and they're fighting against it now. You with me? Clear? Sisters, clear, Walden? That's a person that's praying, they stand to pray, and they're sincere when they're standing to pray. Her husband comes in the room. She starts to, mashallah, she puts on the best recitation of the Quran that she has. And then she catches herself. In the salah, she realizes what she just did. So now she fights against it. She fights against that in the salah, right? Within herself. Or he fights against that within himself in the salah. Which means the only way you recognize that is that a person is aware in the salah. It's not just movements. A person is focused. They understand what's going on in the salah. It's not just movements, that they're paying attention. That they're paying attention so much, they notice when my wife came in, I started reciting louder and slower and put more tajweed. They even notice that about themselves. That when that happens and they notice that, that they fight against that and it'll remove that. Does that invalidate the salah or not? Everybody with me? The person they're fighting against it. Does it invalidate the salah? وَقَدْ اخْتَلَفَ عُلَمَاء مِنَ السَّلَفِ في الاسترسال في الرياء الطارئ هل يحبط العمل أو لا يضر فاعله? Does it, the ulama, the salaf, they differ. Does that invalidate the salah or does it not invalidate the salah? They differ on that. Point being, even if it didn't, that the person has enough consciousness and they're paying attention and they're so focused on the salah that I know, okay, I did that because she came in. Let me leave. All right, let me start that surah over and just, right? That I'm paying attention that much, or she's paying attention that much to be able to make that call on myself. And now I'm fighting against it myself, right? In order to save and preserve that action. It's almost time for the salah for the adhan. Hadith al-thani, the second hadith, but we can start that next week, inshallah ta'ala. Any questions? Hadith al-thani is Jade. Any questions? From
say an individual had the intention to do something haram, but there was something that stopped him from doing it. For instance, he wanted to get in his vehicle to go commit a haram act, but his vehicle broke down. Had his vehicle not broken down, he would have made it to that actual act. But he didn't make it to that act, so does he get a punishment or written for him because of him not being able to do that haram act? But his intentions were to go and do that haram.
I'm with you, Allah A'lam. Forgot the message.
Because I was reading a narration and it was saying that, for the one who had the intention to do a good deed, but he wasn't able to do that good deed, he still gets the reward for doing that action.
Right, so, and for the one who has the intention of doing an evil deed.
Get deep though.
See, I forgot the message. Allahu A'lam. Let's do that. We'll stop there, inshallah, until next week. Unless the sisters got questions. That's the then we got to pray. Sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.
souls. Huh? Move, you ready? Huh? Oh, the hot light. One of y'all. You got it, Fred. Inshallah.